welcome back everybody to another episode of the Elite Investor Show. We're here today with John Robbart. John, we go back a couple years. We've done some deals together too.
Yep.
For those who don't know you, who are watching today, can you briefly introduce yourself and what you do?
Yep. My name is John Robbart, known by many online as Hard Money Johnny. I'm a local private lender, work for an institution called Renovo Financial. We offer rehab loans, rental loans, and new construction loans for real estate investors in the Tampa Bay area.
Okay, so for somebody who's maybe a newer investor and they're not familiar with hard money versus maybe private money, or they're just like, hey, what's the difference between that and a mortgage? Could you explain maybe like what is hard money if I was doing a flip?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's like a spectrum of lending, right?
Yeah.
On one end of the spectrum, you have totally asset-based lending, and all they care about is that you have a heartbeat and that they like the asset. On the other end of the spectrum is your local bank, that typically if you're a self-employed real estate entrepreneur, they want 2 years tax returns, along with a litany of other documents. So I always like to explain this spectrum first, and kind of explaining that Renovo is kind of a nice happy medium, right? We want some documents, and we do care about the credit worthiness of the borrower, but we also care about the project, and kind of use this hybrid underwriting model of experience and financial wherewithal to make lending decisions.
Cool. So the right fit for somebody to come and work with you if they wanted to borrow against a flip is some level of experience so far, right?
Ideally, yeah. We're typically not the greatest fit for somebody who's never done it. Somebody who has maybe a couple rentals or that sort of thing. Like, there are totally exceptions that we make, but generally we're looking for people who have a proven track record.
Yeah. So what advice, and we'll get more into your background, I'm excited to hear you talk about this, but what advice would you give somebody who's like, John, I really want to get up to the level where I am able to work with you, but I've done nothing yet, and I'm really enthusiastic and I can do my first flip. What recommendations would you give to them when they're not yet ready to work with you to get to that point?
So to be clear, we would work with someone with no experience,
Okay.
or just our terms are shifted in a way where we favor working with people who
Okay.
have high levels of experience and great financials. That being said, if somebody does have, let's call it a decent starting point from a financial standpoint, and I can unpack what that means, and they've got a home run of a project, and they've got an animal of a GC who's going to be doing it, and they're local, and ideally I know who they are. Those are all things that maybe we can make some exceptions and maybe let them put a little less down than what we originally would have.
Okay.
But all of it is kind of case by case. It kind of all needs to make sense.
Cool. Okay. You said we could unpack like financial worthiness. What does your ideal borrower look like if they're less experienced on the real estate side?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, credit's great. Having good credit. I think a lot of people hear hard money and they think, well, it's hard money. Like, I don't need to have good credit. In our mind, here's this document that we can pull up and see if you've been making your payments on time.
Yeah.
Whether it's a car payment, your Chase credit card, your mortgage. I don't mean to sound elitist, but if you've made other late payments to other mortgages, who's to say you wouldn't make another late one to us?
Yeah. Past performance is a great indicator of future results.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Beyond that, having some sort of cash reserves. Cash is not trash. Cash is king.
Yeah.
Having an emergency reserve of some sort, plus an emergency reserve for the project. I think those are excellent things to keep in mind.
Cool. Yeah. So what got you into all this, right? And I know you've been in Tampa for several years now. Before that, I think you were up in Boston, right?
Yep.
So what led you over the past, let's say like the past decade, what led you to this point now?
So I was working in a nightclub in San Diego.
Okay.
And I was friends with a guy named Paul, who's now the top producer at Renovo. And he had he was a VIP host, I was a bartender. He had a client who was a partner in a hard money lending company in San Diego. So he got in a couple years before I did. We had always talked about getting out of the service industry and doing something different. I had other sales jobs previous to this. So eventually an opportunity opened up. I started, that was in August of 2019. And then in February of 2020, I moved back to Boston to work under him at a branch that they'd given him. So it was kind of like the next step in his career and in mine, where I was going to get to kind of like work directly under him. And he was already a proven originator. 2 weeks later, COVID happened, and the company that we work for had to eventually close their doors. And during that time, I was kind of figuring out what I wanted to do, and I started brokering loans with his help.
Okay.
And there was a couple of lending companies that offer kind of like a white label program where you can basically create your own lending business with their guidelines and their capital. So I was doing that. He kind of helped guide me a little bit, and while that was happening, he got recruited by Renovo, which previous to this was a lender that was only based in Chicago. And that was their whole model, was we want to be in Chicago and that's it. And
Okay.
in 2020, they opened up in Texas and in Massachusetts.
Okay.
And he was their Massachusetts guy. And at the time, he was like, give me a little bit of time, I'll get you in. By the time he was ready to get me in, I was so happy doing what I was doing. I had my own business, I had my own freedom, all the tax benefits that come with owning your own business. Like I was happy doing that. So that was kind of how we went about things. We stayed friends. He kind of helped mentor me on the side. 2021, I did 38 million in loans.
Yeah.
That following February, he did 38 million in 1 month. And I was like, all right, I gotta rethink what I'm doing. And like,
And at this point, you were not yet at Renovo?
I was not. No,
Okay,
I was just
okay.
on my own, brokering to different large lenders that had
Okay.
white label programs. So.
Okay. And then you noticing that, like you did 1 year what he did in 1 month, that like caught your attention to come over to Renovo?
I was like, I need to change I was clearly everything that I thought I was doing correctly. Like I needed to.
Yeah.
It makes you rethink everything. And Paul's obviously not your average guy.
Yeah.
Even still at Renovo, I think the gap between him and the number 2 guy is like 70 million or something like that. It's crazy.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So something I was thinking about leading into today is you get to work with a lot of different types of projects, a lot of different types of people and investors. Like some people doing low volume, super high end flips where, you know, their sales profit is multiple 6 figures.
Right.
Then you also work with people who are just cranking out a ton of projects, high volume, lower net profit per project. What, like your exposure to all these different types of investors, in your opinion, from you getting to see all of that, what do you think makes some of the better investors? Like what characteristics do you see in getting to work with these different folks where you're like, man, this person is really crushing it and like he has this trait, which is why.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a common theme among my most successful investors is they all have a very specific business plan.
Specific. Yeah.
They're specific to a neighborhood. They're specific to a geography, like, you know, let's call it South St. Pete, right? The multiple smaller neighborhoods within that area, but anything in that region, I have a guy that he'll do it. There's other people that only do new construction. There's other people that are buy and hold. There's other people that, you know, like you said, are higher volume, but they want to do light cosmetic rehabs. They think they're buying at a good enough discount. So I think to answer your question, the most common thing is these people have a very specific plan and they stick to it. And I think that continues to pay dividends for them.
They don't get too far outside their established box of what they will do.
Right.
Which means saying no to the things that don't fit that box.
Right.
So I see this a lot with newer investors when, you know, I'll see them interact, maybe at like an elite investor event. And, and they're like, you know, I'm looking to really get in. I want to network with some wholesalers so I can find some off-market deals. I was like, well, there's hundreds here. Like, who do you want to talk to?
Yeah.
What are you looking for? And something I hear that makes me cringe sometimes is like, I'll do any deal that makes sense. I'm like, I'm going to talk to you in a year and you'll have done nothing. And the reason why is because you're not focused enough, not sharp enough on what success looks like. So if it smacked you right in the face today, you would know it because you're just like looking for everything. Yeah, so that definitely resonates with me.
Yeah.
And I think I have the same approach, which is like geographically focus so that you can become a master in those areas. And then the other things is just noise and you can just disregard it. Or
Absolutely.
turn it over to your friends who you know work in those areas. So
yeah.
Cool. So let's talk about like your workflow a little bit. What are some challenges that you think you've had in the past few years as a hard money lender? I know you've monstrously grown your volume from what I understand. Like what are some challenges you face as you scale that up?
First of all, thank you. You know, I think the biggest thing is just continuing to find time to get out there and get in touch and get in front of people. Yeah. So I try to make a point to go to at least 3 networking events a month. It's like a rule of mine. I try to not miss them. Obviously, the elite investor event I never miss. Yeah. But I mean, you know, whether it's Greg Simpson's TV RIA or Jared puts on a nice event at the Crest community. Like, I try to make sure that I get in front of people at different ones, and they're people that maybe I don't interact with on social media, or I only see them when I go to that one event. So just kind of continue to stay top of mind with people.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like, I'm more of an introvert. That might surprise some people because I can be pretty outgoing, but eventually my social battery gets worn out. But when I start to feel like that, I'll be like, you just got to go.
Right.
When I end up going to those events, I end up making some kind of connection that's valuable.
Yeah.
Whether I was able to help them, or maybe they had something I needed, or for you, maybe you end up doing a deal with them. But I always try to remind myself that of when I'm feeling kind of like socially worn out.
Right. It's very rarely not worth it.
Yeah.
It's been what I've found. I've definitely gone to some events where I'm like, okay, that was a waste of time. But very rarely is it like that.
Yeah. What about some other challenges of kind of like being an entrepreneur? Because you are an entrepreneur, like your success or your failure is largely reliant on your involvement in the business. What are some of your challenges you've experienced besides like consistently having to network as you've grown your volume?
Yeah, so one thing that I do at Renovo is I have one milestone, I should say, that you get to as you're growing your business within Renovo is having your own pod, which is it's basically the term Renovo uses to describe your team. So, I have an assistant, an analyst, and a closer who all work closely with me. But in the beginning, you're sharing those people with others.
Yeah.
And you have to get to a certain level of volume in order to justify getting your own team.
Yeah, like dedicated.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, it's an expense that I share in with Renovo. But they won't just do it because you think that you'll get
I'm
there.
worthy of it, I promise. Yeah.
Right, exactly. You need to prove it. So that was a hurdle that for a while I was having trouble clearing, and then once you get these people, it's like you got to all learn to work together and develop your own internal systems and processes. And continue to work through, because two of the people that we hired were brand new and not with Renovo previously. So that came with its own challenges, and kind of making sure that they were the right fit and finding ways to all work together in a way that works for everyone. So those have been some challenges that we've worked through and continue to work through.
Yeah, so getting to the point where you were able to have that dedicated team, but then also once you had them, establishing your own internal pod kind of processes and systems. Yeah. I think that's always a challenge. So
I think a lot of people think that they can just, I'll make enough money and then I'll just go out and hire people and it will all be solved. And that's just not how it works.
I think that's when it gets harder, because you now, this is my own view, but you're going from working, like when you're a solopreneur and every process and system is up to you and exists only in your own head, you know how to do the things to move the needle in the right direction. But now when you have people, you have to, first of all, you have to relinquish some degree of doing those things, because you're now paying people who should be responsible for some of those things that you now not do. And there's no way that they can come in the first 30 days and know exactly how you want, when you want it, and what success looks like to the maximum extent. So you have to, it's just this crazy combination between like still doing the things to make sure you don't completely fall off the wagon, but give them the accountability but guidance so that they can do the things that are like the delegated type tasks, and then give them the feedback and nurturing so that they can learn to do those things at a successful level, which also requires patience. So
Ideally, some of these processes that you've created and have taught them how to do, ideally they find better ways to do them than you did. Which is a fun one.
Have you seen that happen with your
Absolutely.
What are some of the processes you
I mean, I just, sometimes if there's a certain exception that we need, or a certain thing that I need to be communicated, and one of my team members will do it, they'll have a better way of saying it than I would have. They're sometimes a little bit better at putting it together and organizing those sorts of things than I am.
I try to be mindful of that. Like we have an ops manager, and she can come across, she's firm, but she can say things a little softer than I can sometimes. Like if I have something that's really aggravating me, especially with some other third party, I can be sometimes like too much of a bull. And so I'll ask her to get involved, and it's usually really great, because she'll be like, it's also, I think it also helps that she's feminine. And so it's like, it's less aggressive, and I think that helps a lot. We had an issue with I won't go too much into detail here, but we had an issue with a vendor about mid-year this year, and it would have had a significant impact on something that we were trying to do. I don't know if this, call it like fortune or fate or whatever, but something came up where I couldn't be on the Zoom call, and I was like, I really wanted to go at it, and she's like, I got it. And I followed up with her 2 hours after. I had something down in Sarasota I had to be at, and she was like, it's all taken care of. I was like, I don't know if we would have gotten that result if I was on the call, because like I, you know, me wanting to just like squash it and just like get my way. Like, sometimes that's not the best way.
It's the military,
yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean maybe, but to your point, it can be great to have people that are better than you at like a niche kind of, I guess a niche task that you can rely on to actually like support the team.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're in what is it, October, mid-October right now, Q4. Entering the end of 2024, how has your year been so far, and then what's on the horizon for 2025?
Yeah, I guess, so volume-wise, I mean, I'm in the business of getting as many high-profile, high-level investors as I can.
Yeah.
One of the big draws for me coming to Renovo was, you know, when I was brokering loans, I could only attract a certain level of client. Yeah. And now that I work directly for Renovo, who's now the number 4 lender in the country on loan volume, it's a lot easier to get some of these people, just getting in front of them or getting an introduction to them, which is one of the benefits of being local here in Tampa. Yeah. Is more than likely there's somebody that I know that knows them and can help put us together, or can say, hey, you know, just like you've done for me several times, John's great to work with. You guys should connect. You know, that's been great, kind of continuing to grow and get more of those newer folks on board and growing the business that way. From a loan volume perspective, I think we're just shy of 70 million, which is definitely up over what we were last year. Last year I closed out at around 78, and we still got, you know, a few months to go. So,
what was your goal? I think you told me your goal at the beginning of the year.
Goal at the beginning of the year was 125.
Okay.
So I think that's gonna be a stretch, but you know, if we can hit 100, that'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think it's great to have stretch goals. Think about it like this way: if you're hitting every single goal you ever set out for yourself,
you hit the bar too low.
Are you setting them high enough, right? Like,
exactly.
Yeah. Where do you think you're like you talked about, you want to work with people doing great projects. Like, where is the best source of meeting those people? Just that your organic network here in Tampa. Do you only loan Tampa?
Tampa, St. Pete. I mean, Bradenton. We have deals in Sarasota. We've done deals as far away as Miami and as far north as Tallahassee. But in terms of my direct prospecting efforts, it's really just kind of in this little bubble. Yeah. There are some people who have found that are doing deals, you know, outside of those areas that are. It's in Florida. They're doing a lot of business. Like, we should work with them, kind of thing. So I definitely have some people like that. But in terms of how I find them or the best way to find them, yeah, a lot of it's word of mouth. A lot of people have been really gracious with making referrals. Yeah. So yeah, it's been an excellent source for us.
Cool. Yeah. What's your personal favorite project to lend on?
I could tell you about one that I lent on that was a favorite. I actually had my sign out in front of it with my picture on it. It was a project on Columbus in Massachusetts.
I think I took a photo, maybe send it to you.
That was a nice one. I mean, anything that I think gets a lot of people's eyes on it and they're like, wow, that's really cool. Like, you guys can do those kinds of projects. I think a lot of people think of us and they're like, oh yeah, rehab loans, hard money, fix and flip. But it's like, we also could do 4 townhomes. We could do, we could do rental financing. We can do, so, you know, anything I think that gets a lot of, I guess, good publicity. I don't know if that's the right way to say it.
Yeah,
but just
exposure.
Exposure. There we go. That's a better way to put it. But anything that gets people good exposure, people seeing what we can do and knowing that we're here in the community, ready to help, is the type of stuff I really like to do.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Any project in particular stand out? Is it the one?
That one definitely stands out. You know, those came out really nice. So, you know, anything that has a really nice finished product, I think, is a nice thing to put your name on and get people to know about you.
It's cool to like drive around. I know you do a lot of projects in the Heights. It's probably cool, I imagine, for you to drive around and be like, that's a project alone. You know, that's a project I helped out with. Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool.
My fiance gets tired of it. I'm like, that one.
Yeah. Well, it's cool that she's an agent now too. So there's a little bit of collaboration that's happening now too, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, she just started end of January, mid-January, and has really been taking it by storm. So
Yeah, she has.
yeah,
That's
really
awesome.
proud of her.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm not new to the game. I don't know everything in real estate. I'm not new to the game. And I know what it can cost me in terms of lost opportunity and lost deposit if my lender doesn't come through.
Mm-hmm.
And so like for me, in some cases, it depends on the project. Like I'm willing to not shop the best rate. I'm willing to absolutely go with the lender I know will close, and they'll close on time. They'll do what they said they were going to do. For somebody who's maybe newer and they know they need that, but they haven't found it yet, like what recommendations would you give them so they could be sure to find you or the version of you in their market, like a reliable and trustworthy hard money lender?
Yeah, so I'll answer the last one first. If let's say they're not in Tampa and they're not able to work with me, let's say they're in Columbus, then maybe get in touch with other people who have used a lender that can perform on time.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is just kind of proper expectation setting. A lot of times people think that they have to close in a week to win the deal. And sometimes I'm sure that's probably the case, but I would imagine plenty of times there's sellers that are still living in the house and they think that to negotiate they need to close in a week. Well, maybe that doesn't work for the seller. Maybe you actually need 30 days. And I would venture to say that most private lenders could perform in 30 days.
Yeah.
Kind of the gold standard is 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I think some people say 2 weeks and it ends up being 3, or some people say 2 and they can do it in 1.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think getting testimonials from other people is probably a good place to start if you're not already here.
Ask around.
Ask around, yeah. I mean, most folks will have a person that they use or a guy or gal, and I find that is probably a pretty reliable place to start.
Okay. What about here in Tampa?
Here in Tampa, I mean, if you're wanting to connect with me, I mean, what is it?
Drop it.
My phone number's right here. No, I'm just kidding.
Drop it. Drop your whatever. What do you want to do?
Send me a message on Instagram, Hard Money Johnny, or maybe we can get my phone number in here. Definitely reach out. I'd love to have a conversation and see if I'd be able to help. And see if what they're looking for makes sense.
There you go.
Yeah.
See if it might be a good fit to work with you.
Exactly.
Because not everyone probably is, right?
No. I mean, we're not for everyone. I mean, try to serve as many people as we can, but at the end of the day, it has to make sense for both parties.
Absolutely. So I already know the answer to this, which is funny to ask, but I want to make sure I highlight, this aspect. What sets you apart? I have my own experience in the deal that we worked on together.
Yeah.
And it was a positive one, I'll add. What sets you apart in terms of what you're able to provide in the industry with value? Like what sets you apart as a hard money lender?
Sure, yeah. So there's a few things. One is every lender has their own set of guidelines that they operate within. Mm-hmm. And that's an internal thing, right? So not everyone is willing to share those, but within those guidelines, there's exceptions that can be made. So referring to our specific project that we worked on together, mm-hmm. There was a few hurdles we had to clear. One of them was, I think there was an experience hurdle that we needed to clear. So the first thing that we did was got ahead of it and made sure that we got an okay on that before moving forward.
Yeah, because now once we move forward, I'm banking on you to close, right?
Right.
So if that's kind of like more on your end, but once you come back to me, you're like, hey, we're good to go.
Right.
Then now I can place confidence in that. I think I've seen it happen. I see it happen to a lot of investors. They end up scrambling with days left to close because their lender didn't do that.
Right.
And now they're like, I got what are my options? And they go some private route that costs them like 18%.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which at least you close, and hopefully the deal was good enough that the 18% doesn't totally rob you of all your profits. But yeah, I mean, that the first thing is just kind of making sure that we have all of our ducks in a row before we can proceed. And my team is extremely helpful in making sure that I don't miss anything.
Yeah.
The second thing is, a lot of the value in working with a private lender is the fact that you get your construction money with it. Now, how do you get the construction money is typically a pretty big differentiator. With us, we have internal asset management and we have an internal servicing company within our business.
Yeah.
So for us to release a draw to you, we have a local guy, Mike, who drives to your project and he takes photos. Now, the difference between Mike and the way other third-party draw servicing companies operate is Mike is actually a decision maker. So if Mike thinks that your foundation is 20% complete or 50% complete, whatever, that's the amount that you're getting.
Yeah.
Versus a third-party company, the guy that they send out there, his only job is to take photos. He uploads them into a thing. It goes into a PDF. That PDF goes to his manager, which then goes to a loan buyer who, and that whole process that I just described, you're talking about at least a week.
Yeah.
So with us, in some cases, can be same day, but what we typically tell people is 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah. For draw, once a draw
For the
is
draw,
requested.
yeah. So from the minute Mike gets out there to the minute the money hits your account is 24 to 48 hours.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's a big one. And then also not having to deal with third-party loan servicing companies. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of cold calls I've made where they say, hey, are you working with servicing company or servicing company? And say, oh, no, we service our own loans.
Yeah.
And we also service other people's loans is a new thing that we've kind of
didn't know that.
Taken on a few, we call them service transfers, but yeah, we've taken on some from outside.
Real quick on that, full disclosure, we did a project earlier this year. I made no money. It was like break even.
Yeah.
I think it was like nominal loss. I think we lost like $2,000 on a $760,000 project. It's like basically you made nothing. Will you look at how much they actually made?
There's assumptions we make. I mean, we're not asking for tax returns, so we wouldn't see that we wouldn't see it down to the dollar. But there's certain things that it's at a certain point, if you look at the cost basis and the sale price is equal to the cost basis, that there was a loan in there. Yeah. You can look.
Yeah.
So you can make an assumption about what the holding cost was and see that they pretty clearly lost money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's obviously not ideal.
It's not ideal. Yeah. But
it does happen.
As an entrepreneur, I'm willing to test. I'm big on this principle lately. I'm willing to test things. And when you do test things, sometimes those things fail.
Right.
And when they fail, you learn something. When you learn something new, you can implement it and re-enter the process of testing again.
Right.
So I'm grateful for the times I've tested and failed because they make me better.
Yeah.
Not to get I totally deviated from talking hard money, but
no, that's valuable info.
Yeah. Yeah. We haven't done too much on our page about that yet. Just because the hurricane stuff the past few weeks here.
Absolutely.
But no, I learned some good things there. One, I will say our analysis was accurate because it was a market downturn scenario, and the analysis I run is for us to just break even, which is what we did. And then the other thing is the proximity of a cemetery, the effect that has on your comps is I think it was more than I anticipated.
Right.
I didn't really adjust enough for that, for sure. Yeah, that made a difference.
Even in your worst case scenario.
Well, the worst case scenario.
Oh, it did factor that in.
No, I did not factor that in enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it would have made, I don't know, maybe a $10,000 or $20,000 difference. I think it was probably a $50,000 difference, roughly.
Yeah.
Yeah, made a difference. Yeah.
That's tough.
And then the other thing I did, I don't mind sharing it openly, is I built a 3-story home on a street where the maximum stories of every other home on that same street was 1. Every other.
So your house is towering over everyone else's.
Yeah. So I'll just think twice again before doing that and do tighter math for sure.
Yeah.
So, but hey, it's all good. That's if you don't do those things, how do you move the needle towards improvement? That's my view on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've hit a lot of singles and doubles, and not every project's going to be that. I've hit some home runs too. It's a little less frequent, but. This business is not without risk.
Yeah.
So that was a good reminder. Yeah.
How has that shifted things for you going forward? Do you feel like you're needing to buy things at a steeper discount to make them worth it?
I would agree. I actually, looking back, I got that land for a pretty good price. I think I would have made different design decisions than I did. I probably wouldn't have done the 3-story.
Okay.
I would have controlled costs a little bit better and probably done a little bit different, upgrades. Here's one. We put carpet in that, and we had a price point when we entered the market was above $800. You can't really be doing that. Can't really be having carpet in homes that are above $800,000.
Right.
Above $750,000.
Yeah.
People don't like that.
Yeah.
And so when you couple all these factors, you got like 3 stories where everyone else is 1. You got proximity to a cemetery. You've got the market kind of downturn in Tampa with interest rates being held at a high level for a long time, like less buyers are in the market. So all these factors like compounded led to us not having a very profitable project. The one that we did though,
Right.
which was 2 blocks up, that one like doubled the returns we projected in 30% less time, and we were out like real quick. And we did some things on that I think were the right decision.
Right.
It was a 2-story. It conformed with some other houses around the area. It wasn't near a
Blended
cemetery.
right in. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was near it, but not walk out of your house. And
You can't see it.
Yeah.
You can't see it. Yeah. So that one did great, right? So that's an example of like a base hit, a double maybe.
So going back to this lot that you broke even on, would you buy that lot again? I know you said you'd make different design decisions, but going back, knowing what you know now, would you buy that same lot?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Just build something totally different.
Yeah, I built 2-story, 2,400-ish square feet.
Yeah.
I'd probably do it again. I mean, hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different things I think I would do. I would enter the market pricing it very aggressively day one.
Yeah.
Also, there's a comp right up the street. They're in the 900s. It was very similar to what we just sold. I'm like, man, I don't know. I'm gonna keep an eye on that one.
Right.
I hope for their sake it goes well, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. But
I think I know what you're talking about.
yeah, it's a good product.
Yeah.
It's just finding the right buyer.
Yep.
So for newer investors who might be looking to grow their business, what's a common misconception you see differentiating between hard money and other lending products?
I think a lot of people just kind of loop hard money all into one category. And as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, there is a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So on one end, you get the banks, very credit driven, tax returns, the whole 9. On the other end, it's solely like, do we like the asset and do you have enough money to close? And beyond that, there's not any real due diligence. So I think sometimes people mistake asset-based lending, which is confusing because there's actually a company named asset-based lending, but I'm referring to a lender that's solely asset-based and someone that's kind of like a hybrid, a little bit more credit-based. And I think sometimes people think that like, oh, it's always going to be the same price.
Yeah.
The other thing is like, oh, you know, there's going to be so many documents that I'm going to need to submit, and that, you know, it's so much easier if I can just get a private guy who will fund the whole thing for me. And listen, those guys are out there. I know a few of them myself, but you know, those private guys are typically pretty selective about who they'll extend those terms to, and they're typically expensive and don't always have, you know, endless amounts of cash to deploy at any one time. So I know it's kind of a long-winded answer, but you know, I think the thing is, you know, maybe don't make too many assumptions going in.
Yeah.
Ask the questions that are important to you. So if, you know, if speed is important, or getting response is important, or the rate is important, or the leverage is important, like try and get a good understanding of those things up front and understand like how those things change over time as the relationship progresses, and as, you know, assuming treasuries stay flat, because that's what rates are based off of. Assuming treasuries stay flat and I continue to do more deals, does my rate change? How does that work?
Yeah.
You know, ask those questions now versus going in assuming, oh, well, it was 20% of my first deal, like I'll never get to 10% because that guy doesn't do 10%. It's like, well, ask.
Okay, cool. You ready to do some overrated, underrated?
Let's do it.
All right, Riverwalk in Tampa, overrated or underrated? First instinct, you gotta go first instinct.
Underrated.
Underrated?
Yeah.
That's great, okay. Going to Lightning games.
I haven't been, so I
You haven't been to one?
I haven't been to one
We'll
yet.
have to go.
Yeah,
we'll have to go. I would say underrated, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Things on Water Street. Water Street. Like,
Slightly overrated.
Slightly overrated?
Yeah.
Okay, what about like this is one I like, the Addition stairs. Getting your photo at the Addition stairs.
Totally overrated.
Totally overrated. Okay. Getting into
I had to take a strong stance on something, and that was definitely going to be it.
And that's your strong stance?
Yes.
All right. Getting into the luxury watch game.
Underrated.
Underrated? Okay, cool. So I think that rounds us out. Any closing thoughts that you'd have for any of our viewers? Anything that like you want them to take away from this session?
Man, there's so many, but I think the main one that I want to leave people with is like, if you're thinking about being a real estate investor, have a plan.
Yeah.
And make sure that you have the financial wherewithal to do what you think you want to do. Mm-hmm. It's better to have more than not enough.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get around the right folks.
Get around the right folks, and you know, the Elite Investor Meetup that happen quarterly, I think is my number one networking event that I recommend to people.
I appreciate it.
And if people want more than that, then they should consider joining the mastermind.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah.
I did not tell him to say that. Cool.
Plug here for that.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, good seeing you.
Yeah, thank
All
you.
right.